Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Silent Hill. So, of course, a lot of people will know that this is coming from a video game that I've never played, in all honesty. I've just seen the movies, because I've seen this movie once before, and then I went back and rewatched it today. Still really good film. I really do enjoy it. I remember the sequel, and I thought that the sequel is also really interesting. But yeah, so going into this film, we of course have this being in a very teeing up like fashion. We have this mother and her daughter forcibly going and trying to find this place in a map called Silent Hill. Well, this town evidently does no longer exist on a map because it's basically quarantined off, telling people that they should never go into that place because supposedly it is toxic for whatever reason. Because it doesn't seem like they clearly explain that. But I don't know. Like, they could come up with any number of reasons why this Silent Hill, like, you shouldn't go. To me, this movie does remind me of the Clive Barker film Nightbreed. I think it's called Clive Barker. I could be wrong. Cause it's been a while since I've seen that movie. Where we have one character who is desperately trying to go back to a place called Midian, a place that he's never been. But then eventually, once he does go to Midian, it's to be this like graveyard-ish like thing that is to be underground. This demon lair for all these monstrous creatures. And so this character has to die to otherwise be a part of this group. And so it kind of feels like Nightbreed to me. Because eventually the ending really just says, like, kind of like that there is to pretty much be a permanent thing going on here, let's just say, in a cryptic like sense for the beginning of this review. Then we'll get into spoilers. I would say that this movie at some points does have like this Resident Evil kind of vibe. I would really see like monsters characters like the Pyramid Head, and I'm like, why does this character look so familiar? uh, like a lot of times you would see also like the creatures that are like the Dark Nurse in this, and you would at tons at seemingly tons and tons of time eventually you would see kind of some kind of nurse monster in some kind of horror thing, because a lot of times you would have these broken down hospitals, or you'd have something along those lines where eventually a bunch of doctors or nurses or whatever, or just sometimes it would just be random that, hey, here's a nurse, and like she's going and having the classic outfit, which basically shows all the cleavage. Give me some more of that cleavage. Go ahead, give me some more of that. But yeah, but we also have a guy in a bathroom stall that is, I guess, really just not having a good time in this movie. But hey, like, he's just crawling around to have a good time. So yeah, so what is the teeing up moment of this movie? So we have a girl who is suffering from sleepwalking, and it seems the only cure for Rosa to possibly cure this girl's sleepwalking is to bring her to a place called Silent Hill, which isn't an easy place to find on a map, but they dare in fact find it. And it seems that we have this detective consistently following this woman because supposedly there had been this story that had otherwise been tied to this place before, is the main reason why it seems that this Sybil character, who is this detective, which a lot of people know from The Walking Dead, because she played Adrian in The Walking Dead, eventually you'll understand why this person has been following this woman eventually when she goes into suspicious measures of trying to get to Silent Hill. So, once we get to Silent Hill, we eventually find that this place is seemingly a barren wasteland. It seems like Fallout to me. It seems like it seems like the video game Fallout. It seems like any kind of really this movie seems very familiar into the video game realm of things. Besides this just being a Silent Hill video game. No, it just seems like there's a lot of other video games that have kind of copied and pasted over the years to seem like Silent Hill without really just blatantly saying it. So, going into this film, eventually, it seems that Rosa is to stumble upon some supposed survivors that have been scavenging for food, because these people seem to never want to leave Silent Hill for obvious reasons, which won't be obvious until the end of this film. So this is kind of like the Prisoners of the Ghostland, the Nicolas Cage film that came out recently. And so, I think when I reviewed that movie, I was kind of like, man, this feels like Silent Hill. So hence why when I'm going into Silent Hill, I'm like, yeah, this feels just like that other movie that I just saw, because I referenced this movie into that one. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's go into that double 5 time territory. I think that I've teed up this movie enough. There's some cool action sequences where basically people are to try to run away or defend themselves, or to basically try and fend off a monsterish creature of things which they don't understand what the heck it is, because how could you? But I hopefully am going to help you possibly understand who any number of these things are, and hope that I probably put out a better review than I might have before in past, where people are like, yeah, you really nailed all this stuff, or no, you were nowhere close. And I'm like, nah, okay. With that said, let's go into that double 5 time territory, because it's that customary time yet again to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. So, beginning of film, we have girl who ends up just trottling off as she is to sleepwalk. Just sleepwalking, just like, Silent Hill! I want to go all up in that Silent Hill for whatever reason. And so Rosa, Sharon's mother, who's the sleepwalking girl, is to chase after her, grab her before she is to fall off this ledge. Christopher, who is kind of running off into the street, is trying to get to his daughter in a hopefully safe manner, but it doesn't really seem all that safe. Sean Bean is the father of this movie, and he is to, of course, be from Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, a bunch of other amazing films. Speaking of a Nicolas Cage film, he was in National Treasure, the first one. Supposedly Sean Bean's role in this movie, Christopher, was actually supposed to be much shorter in this film, but I guess for whatever reason, maybe budget, or maybe there was just hey man, we need to just have we don't have time for maybe there was some effects or something that they lost the budget on, or something like that. Maybe things were taking too long to make, as far as creatures or monsters or whatever. So basically they just continued to use Christopher in this movie, I guess. I don't know. I was kind of Googling something, and I saw that Christopher's character was supposed to be a lot shorter in this film for whatever reason. But anyways, so Rose is to want to give seemingly Sharon what she wants which is to go to Silent Hill. So Rose is going to try to figure out where this place is. And so Rose is driving off and is to try to get some gas. And Christopher ends up canceling all the credit cards. Rose is to call Christopher and just be like, well, what the is going on there, buddy? What's going on? You! No, don't cancel credit cards. Even give me more money than you were before. No. So Rose is like, Christopher, what are you doing? You canceled all of our credit cards? And Christopher's like, you know what? I don't think going to this Silent Hill place is going to help our daughter. I think she needs to go to a mental hospital where we're probably never going to see her again because she's going to go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and we're never going to be able to see her. And, like, we might as well just boot her right into this mental hospital and just they'll figure something out. And Rose is like, no, like, how about we go and find this Silent Hill place? Because I'm sure it's, like, the greatest place on Earth. It's, like, better than Disneyland, or, like, whatever the heck else would be the greatest place on Earth when you don't have, like, quarantine and all kinds of stuff to just be at your horrible side of things. Or even realize that, is this place even open today? I don't know. Should I even be coming in here? I don't know if this place is going to get closed at any moment. Yikes. Anyways, so hence why even if right now, if I even had money to ever travel the world anywhere, like, I wouldn't probably go anywhere because I would just be like, I don't think anything's open. I don't want to be worried that, like, I'll go somewhere and it doesn't exist or it closed down or something else happened. But anyways, so, but evidently Silent Hill, just happy slappy Willy's Wonderland is just open for business, I guess. So Christopher is just to say, like, okay, Rose, go ahead and go and take our daughter to this place. Don't bother paying for gas or anything. Just drive on off and everything will be fine. So Rose is to talk to Sharon, and all of a sudden, Rose is to realize that Sharon is drawing some kind of deformed, bizarrish, dark pictures because Sharon is really starting to turn emo, but she doesn't realize it. Or she's sleep drawing, and man, is she a real Picasso. Like, man, this girl is to be sleep drawing better than she is to be drawing when she's awake. Let's just say that. So, while Rose is trying to go and pay for gas, Sybil ends up going and is to poke her head into this car. Is like, excuse me, miss, are you okay? And Sharon is like, I don't talk to strangers. And then she rolls the window up, and Sybil's like, good girl, but still. Do you want to order a pizza? If you order a pizza, that means that you're not in good standing. If you know what I mean? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Raise your hand if you're not having a good time. Raise it. Let me know how to help you. So Rose drives off, and so Sybil is to go and to write down the license plate so that eventually she can track down the car and continue to follow it like a creeper, because she's a police officer that's doing her job. But I don't know about that. Maybe, like, Sybil is just like, you know what, I just have a thing for that kind of vehicle, car, and I just want to also just bust somebody's chops. So Rose is to go on and to make her way to finding Silent Hill. because Rose has asked the person inside the store, like, "Hey, where is Silent Hill? I haven't quite seen that on a map." And they're like, "Yeah, you're not going to see it on a map. Like, that place is basically like shut down. It's like the one National Lampoon's Vacation where they end up going to Wally World, and Wally World's just shut down. It's like that place wasn't quarantined off. It was just shut off because it wasn't like the start of the season or something. What was the goofy thing with Wally's World? So, as I've said, Willy's Wonderland, which is a Nicolas Cage thing, which isn't the exact same thing, but still, it's weird enough. So, Rose goes on and makes it into Silent Hill, and so eventually what ends up happening is because there's also be the spot where Rose is sitting with Sharon on this tree telling her that she's going to go to the magical place of Silent Hill, and because evidently this girl has been screaming that in her sleep for I don't know how many numerous days and months and years. And so they go into Silent Hill, and eventually what ends up happening is it seems that eventually Rose is to lose her child. And so Rose is like, well, okay, it looks like I'm going to go and find out where my kid is. Evidently my kid is gone. So Rose goes off and is to just kind of poke her head through the places of Silent Hill to eventually find herself mixed in with these creatures called Gray Children, or a Gray Child, where all of a sudden she's like, oh my god, and then she's just kind of like having to just dodge away all of these Gray Children, and it's really effing scary to just see these things, and I'm like, oh my god, no! I've seen this before. I wasn't all that scared the first time around. But, so, Rose is just like, well, F that! I'm gonna go back to my car and get the out of here. Like, yeah, my child and everything, but... But this girl chose this place. I didn't. This girl chose to want to be in this horrifying place. Not me. I was like Disney World, straight up. I was like, any fun place in the world, let's go there. Not this place. I was like, no. So, since Rose's child is to be gone, all of a sudden Sybil and her police motorcycle ends up weirdly breaking down, I guess around the same spot that that evidently Rose's car broke down, roughly. So Sybil goes and walks to find Rose in her car, and now her child is gone. And so Sybil is just like, get out of your car. Like, I'm gonna arrest you. Get out of your car. Like, I don't trust you. And so Sybil is arresting Rose, and so Sybil is like, well, yeah, my motorcycle broke down, so now we're just gonna walk all the way to I guess the next like gas station or something to eventually get a phone and like call out for help. So they start walking about their ways, and so all of a sudden there's to be this armless man that appears to just be like, oh, I'm gross looking. Look at me. And so this weird thing just splues out this acid from out of its chest. And so now Sybil is firing away at this thing, and she ends up getting acid on her helmet. She chucks her helmet off quickly, and then eventually has to chuck off her jacket. And so now Sybil is going even closer to this thing, because that's a smart strategy, right? And she just keeps firing closer and closer into this thing, into his chest, into its head, and then kills whatever this was off, which was simply called the Armless Man. So now both Rose and Sybil are just like, you know what? Like, I'm really loving this whole, like, Silent Hill place. How are we, like, instead of just trying to, like, walk out of this place, how about we just go further in? Like, that sounds like a great idea, right? Because what really actually happens is while Sybil is to be dealing uh, with the armless man, Rose is to end up running off because Rose realizes that Sybil doesn't give a crap about Rose's kid. And Rose, her main mission was to eventually go and find her kid. And so, since Sybil is now busy getting acid spitted on and whatever out of a chest, weirdly, Rose takes the time to go and run off and then eventually get, like, the cuffs from behind her to now in front of her, so at least she has the ability to technically use her hands. Like, I don't remember at what exact point eventually does this woman get uncuffed. Maybe when she teams back up with Sybil, but we'll get to that. So Rose decides to go into let's get to Christopher. So Christopher also decides that he's going to go and take an adventure to Silent Hill because it seems like he found a brochure about it in the mail, and he's like, you know what, this Silent Hill does seem great. Maybe I should go out there, but not go the exact same route of which that my wife and daughter went. I'm just going to take try to, like, get into it another way. But the whole brochure thing was a joke. I made a joke. I made it funny. Haha. Let me pause here for a second. Yeah. Anyways, so Christopher is to go on and drive to where he's to try to get into Silent Hill to eventually bump into this Officer Thomas Gucci, who I believe is an FBI agent. We find out later in some part of this film, it seemed that Officer Thomas was, I guess, a police officer within Silent Hill. But then I guess he ended up conveniently getting out of Silent Hill before all the real bad crap really just started popping off. And so he went off to become an FBI agent. But it seems like he is to deal with stuff within this town. And it also seems like Officer Thomas doesn't age all that much, in all honesty. But I guess that's just me. Maybe that's just me thinking that, like, oh no, he looked younger in one part of it, but he looks older now. I'm like, I don't know. But anyways, so Christopher is to eventually go with Officer Thomas into Silent Hill. Officer Thomas is to be on his loudspeaker from his car to tell Rosa, it's like, hey, like, I'm Officer Thomas Gucci. I'm here to get you to safety. I'm a police officer. I'm working with the FBI and whatever. Is he an FBI guy? I don't really quite remember. But, like, he's seemingly much more substantial than any of the other people there. So Officer Thomas goes off with Christopher to just start going into buildings, and weirdly enough, Christopher is to kind of take a big old whiff of some part of this building, which Thomas is to kind of tell him, like, hey man, like, just breathe into that mask because you can whiff up some of these fumes and whatever, and you could keel over, or you can get really sick. So Christopher is all of a sudden to smell his wife's perfume and have the sense that she is here, or maybe sense her. And Officer Thomas is like, dude, no one's here. Like, no one is any. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're trying to drag me into. So, both Officer Thomas and Christopher, and I know I'm trying to get some certain kind of project here done, so that way we can kind of put a pin in that and come back to the adventures of Rose and Sybil for most of the journey. So after that moment, Christopher goes back over the bridge to have Officer Thomas tell him, like, hey man, like, just go home, like, go into your nice sweet little bed and never come back here again. Like, we'll eventually get your wife for you. But Christopher is kind of nosy, so he digs up some Silent Hill files to eventually find out that, a little bit more about his daughter. And so he ends up going to this one place where he had adopted his daughter from, and is to kind of mention about the adoption papers and the information and all that kind of good stuff. And all of a sudden, Officer Thomas is to pop in again to be like, didn't I tell you to go home? Like, didn't I tell you to just bugger off? And Christopher's like, well, I wanted answers. And Officer Thomas is like, you know what? How about you just get answers all at home and leave me alone? And I'm going to go and stay here and deal with the problems that has been plaguing my town for the last 30 years. I'll go and deal with that. You can go and sit at your couch and sleep for a while. I think you've earned it. So eventually Christopher is to go back home because there's really nothing much else he can do. Because Officer Thomas is like, dude, I am going to freaking arrest you if you do anything else. Like, I will book you for the rest of your life if that's what it's going to take. So now that we got that story mostly taken down, at some points we have Christopher getting phone calls from Rose, supposedly, but it's a bunch of static and he can't really make anything out. And so we'll put a pin in that, because basically that's all that's really left of Christopher to really talk about for him. So back with Rosa, back with maybe Sybil, once they separate. So Rose is to go off into this facility, and eventually she is to try to go in here, and eventually she is to stumble into this bathroom where all of a sudden there is to be seemingly Rose having a bunch of keys, like gender keys, from this facility. But then eventually Rose makes it into this bathroom, and all of a sudden Rose is to go into this one bathroom stall where we're to be met with a really awesome guy named Colin, who is just dead and barbed wired and seemingly, like, in a weird way, pretzeled into this bathroom stall. Like, his legs are, like, his feet are touching his head. Like, he's weirdly in this, like, circular pretzel. And I'm just like, good grief, that's a flexible person, whoever that is. Just, like, having their feet, like, touching their head, and they're just dragging their body like that is so weird, but so cool also. So this guy was stuck in the bathroom stall, just having something hanging out of his mouth, just like, ah. So Rose ends up grabbing this thing that is out of Colin's mouth, and it's to be a clue. So all of a sudden, Rose is to eventually kind of hear some kind of soldiers kind of walking around. We end up finding out that these guys, I think, are to be called the Order soldiers, which we kind of see in the image that is right here. Like these kind of characters, you kind of can barely make them out or whatever. Like those are the gas mask guys that are like walking around in this place. It seems that at one point, because I tried to Google like who these characters were, and at one point they ended up saying that they were the Order soldiers, and then another thing ended up just saying that they were Boogeyman, which I don't know what that's from. That might not even be from Silent Hill, or that might be just some certain character specifically tying into Silent Hill. So I don't know. I was just really confused. But so Rose is to quickly go and find whatever janitor key to lock this bathroom door. And the soldiers are trying to like break into this door. They're really putting their legs and their back and maybe their groin into it. I don't know. To eventually, because they need to go to the bathroom. They really need to go to the bath. They're like, dude, we just need to take a pee. Like, why are you locking the door? We need to go to the bath. We're not even gonna bother you. We just want to take a pee. Like, I guess we'll just pee off to the side here. But, like, you're really, like, we want to just go into the bathroom like a normal human being, but you're locking us out. So, eventually, all of a sudden, whatever bird bat thing is in these guys' cages going wild. And so they decide to grab this bird bat cage thing and run off to, I guess, eventually just go to safety. All of a sudden, there's to be this tornado siren going off to just, I guess, tell people that, hey, crap is getting real. You better flush twice. So Rose is just be like, well, okay, like, so something crazy must be going off right now. So all of a sudden, the room is just slightly tweak and change and all of a sudden start to decay even. And so all of a sudden, Rose is to eventually look at towards the end of the bathroom stall to see that Colin, I guess, had finished up his toiletry time. And so he just wants to get out. He's like, you know what? Like, hey, man, like, I dropped a serious deuce in there. Watch out. And so, like, Colin and his barbed wire looking grossness is just dragging his way from out of this bathroom stall. So Rose is just like, well, you know what? I think I finished too. Like, I think I washed my hands. I think I'm good. I'm going to get the heck out of here. So eventually Rose just decides that she's going to leave this room to eventually journey on more and more further into this facility, this just place that they are to be in, to eventually just stumble upon this guy who is to be called Pyramid Head, weirdly. And Pyramid Head is to have all of these juicy just bugs all over him. And evidently these things are to be called creepers. And I'm just like, you know what? That's a boatload of gross. I don't like massive looking bugs in my horror movies. Like, I don't like spiders. I don't like bugs. Like, if anything, I have seen Eight-Legged Freaks once. I've seen that movie. But I am just not a bug person when it comes to horror films. Like, I just don't like them. It's not an enjoyment of which that I hold or have or whatever. But from time to time, I've seen a bug or two, but I wouldn't recommend it. So, Rose is eventually just meeting up with just Pyramid Head, and Rose is just like, hey, Pyramid Buddy! You're gonna be a real standout in this film. Like, just wait till everybody just sees you. They're just gonna be like, wow, this guy looks cool with all his bugs. But you know what? I'm also just gonna like try to get out of here. Like, it seems like you have this big, massive sword of a thing, and I think I'm gonna be peacing out. I think I'm just gonna head this way. So Rose just runs off to eventually stumble into Sybil, and so they decide to try to bunker down into this one room and to grab this one like long spear thing to go and try to hold this door shut. And so all of a sudden Pyramid Head is going and having this big sword thing of his and jabbing it into this door, which makes, of course, a big massive hole for all of a sudden these creepers to start crawling in. And then Pyramid Head tries to grab the part that's locking this door and try to grab it. But then Sybil ends up deciding to just start like shooting everything. Shooting this guy's arm, shooting the creepers that are to come on into this door. And so Pyramid Head is just like, you know what? How about I just get the F out of here? Like, I'm not gonna, like, nah, like, it ain't worth me trying to get after these people when really I'm probably gonna lose an arm in the process. Like, I'm just gonna get out of here. So the creeper ends up just going off and vanishing seemingly for the rest of the film. So next up, while Rose was to also go and try to find her daughter before she met back up with Sybil, she met this girl named Dahlia, or Dahlia. I want to say it's Dahlia. Dahlia is to have supposedly, when Rose was to show a picture of this girl, Dahlia was to say, it's like, oh, well, that's my daughter. Like, you took that from me. Or, like, that's, like, who you are is who I am kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, this is really confusing. I'm like, so what is Dahlia is to really just say here? I guess supposedly Dahlia had lost a daughter at some point, and so yeah, it's just a weird, bizarre story. So eventually Sybil and Rose are to go on and like start just kind of going through this place more and more, and it seems that we end up finding out that Rose is to seemingly try to find a person that is to look like her daughter, and because evidently Rose had swerved from the road before when she was making it into Silent Hill, because this girl who is to actually be Eliza, but she looks a lot like Sharon, or no, wait. Technically, no. Well, a girl that looks like Sharon, let's just say, to kind of perfect this. So eventually, we have Rose who ends up going and seeing this girl again, and so this girl is to turn around and it is to look like Sharon. But like Rose is like, well, you're not Sharon, like you could probably be her twin or something like that. But the person is to talk to her for a brief moment and then eventually vanishes. So they end up going on, and so eventually they stumble upon some scavengers, some people that are to be left. So they end up stumbling upon a girl named Anna who is seemingly messing with Dahlia in this one building. And so eventually they find that there is this symbol that is on a lot of the buildings. And I guess to kind of tell people, like, it has like something to do with. I was trying to think of what the symbol was, but I got nothing. So eventually, Anna and Dahlia and Rose and Sybil are all to go and try to find, I think, a church where everyone is to be held in there, where who are left of survivors. So they just said, oh, okay, that sounds really cool, and maybe eventually we can find Rose's daughter in there, like while we're kind of going in there. So eventually they make it in there, and they're talking to the survivors, and so they end up meeting this girl called Christabella, and so Christabella is kind of talking about what had happened there and all kinds of things, and so are kind of where they are at now, these people. And so what ends up happening right before this group gets into this church, we have Pyramid Head who reappears, that is to grab Anna and to rip off all of her clothes and then grab her skin, rip her skin off, and fling her skin. And by that time, Dahlia, Sybil, and Rose have all just like, dude, like, we're leaving. Like, this girl is gonna die. Like, there's nothing we can do. And like, Pyramid Head is wanting to just rip off just stripped off that woman. So like, we're booking out of here. So they close the door, and there's to be this one old lady that is to be asking for Anna. And if I would have been Rose or Sybil, like, dude, I'm not gonna put in a bad first impression. I'm not gonna say nothing about this girl. You just go on out of the doorway there, and you're going to find her dead corpse just laying around. But hopefully you can identify her, because I'm sure she'll be missing some skin, if you know what I mean. So Christabel decides that she's going to go with Sybil and Rose to help them go and find this girl. And Christabel is also going to be sending some order soldiers out to go and figure out where this girl is throughout this town. So Christabella is telling Rose, like, hey, like, don't worry about this girl eventually being, like, found. It's just only going to be a matter of time. So all of a sudden, Christabella is to coincidentally had found this locket of Rose. And so Christabel's like, well, hey, I just so happened to stumble upon this locket. Is it yours? And so Rose is like, oh, yeah, that's mine. And it has a picture of my daughter in it. And Christabel's like, oh, you're a witch. You're a Doctor Strange witch. Yeah. So all of a sudden now the order soldiers are now going and wanting to, like, seemingly try and like kill both Sybil and Rose, because they assume that they're witches now, because Sharon is to be this demon child that they have to try and burn or wipe off of across the earth, because they don't know any better, I guess. So all of a sudden, Sybil is to go and try to defend against these order soldiers. She is trying to go and take them down, and is to basically just push Rose into this elevator, and is to grab the piece holding the elevator open. And so Sybil is telling like Rose, it's like, I hope you find her, and then like she ends up leaving. And so what ends up happening to Sybil is Christabel and the order soldiers take this woman. Evidently, they beat the crap out of her, sadly. And so they tie her up to this ladder, weirdly. They rope her down into this ladder. And so, in the middle of this church room, they end up putting together this bonfire. And then they just lower this girl down via this ladder into this fire. And she burns up and dies. I'm like, son of a bitch! Like, so this girl that probably had, like, wanted probably nothing to do with Silent Hill, like, she just died. Like, she could have just easily just, like, never gone and paid any attention to Rose and whatever, and she would have lived the rest of her life. But no, Sybil had to go out of her way to eventually go and get to this woman and eventually bring her into Silent Hill, which basically led to her death. So, also we had a moment where Officer Thomas was to mention to Christopher that at one point there was this story where one guy had brought one kid into Silent Hill, and evidently this kid had went into some well or something, and eventually Sybil was to find this kid and to stay with him for as long as humanly possible within this well until they could eventually find rescue. And so, like, she was made like this big, massive hero because of that. And that is the reason why Sybil goes and tries to look after children that are around this area, because she's afraid that eventually that kind of thing will repeat over and over and over again. So, hence why we have so many great children that are to open up this movie. So, so Sybil is now dead. So Rose is just to go off because supposedly she had gone to a map to try and find where Rose was. Or where Rose was. Where Sharon was. Rose is trying to find out where Sharon was. And so eventually she had this map and she's like, okay, I have to go left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, right. And then, like, Sybil is just like, 4! And Rose is like, shut up, I'm trying to concentrate. I'm trying to figure out where this room is. Left, right, right. And Sybil's like, 4! It's like, shut up! Anyways, so Rose has to go through this certain set of rooms to go into this certain door, and to supposedly try and find her child, I would naturally assume. But instead, she ends up finding out something a little bit more than where her child is, and Christabel ends up actually finding Rose's actual child with the order soldiers. And so while Rose was trying to make it to where supposedly Sharon was, eventually she bumps into these things called the Dark Nurses. Okay, so Rose is to go in here and, like, she ends up turning this light on, and it seems like the nurses are getting closer and closer to Rose. So Rose turns the light off, and so now she's like, okay, so there has to be some kind of trick or something like that I can get past these nurses. I'm like, man, I kind of wonder, like, the part of the game of which that this would have to be like done, this little trick maze of a thing or whatever. Like maybe like it would be much more that you would just have to kill off all these nurses, and maybe you wouldn't actually have to just like kind of like a maze run through them. But so Rose starts to kind of like sneak kind of around these nurses, and she's like, okay, I gotta like figure out if any of these things are gonna be close to attacking me. All of a sudden, it seems that one nurse, all of a sudden, is to just kind of hear Rose, and she comes wildly swinging with this scalpel, all of a sudden killing this one other nurse, and then there just starts to be going this what is a perfect word? This like sound ricochet of things where all of a sudden all these nurses start to kill one another all off in one section. Because like one person hears a slice, the other person hears a slice, repetitiously like sound is just going off and going back and forth. Oh, I guess I should have said where to have watched this also. Too late. Evidently this is on Stars right now. But like I would go onto an app called TV Crush, and I easily watch Silent Hill for absolutely free without any kind of subscription. So you can do that. Especially it's a little late now, but oh well. I forgot about mentioning it. But at least I mentioned it somewhere in the video. And eventually, if someone ever is to ever ask, then it's like, hey, I said it in somewhere in the video. So, but we're pretty much at the end now. We're at the end game now. So, Rose watches all these nurses basically just slice one another's neck and whatever the heck else, like heads, necks, body parts, whichever, because all these nurses are all blind and they can't see this woman anyways. So, Rose makes it through the room of nurses to eventually make it into this other room where there's to be this burnt up woman in this room who is to supposedly be this girl named Elisa, who I guess had made a child supposedly with the devil, we are to believe, because the character that I guess had stopped Rose from getting any further and like kind of stalled her car, I guess was supposedly the devil, we are to believe. Because Rose is to eventually go into this hospital room, this kind of heavily burnt down hospital room, and of course, this nurse is that's taking care of her. We never see like the back of her until the very end, where we find out that she's blind and disfigured and whatever. Because of course, because it's Silent Hill, and so we see this heavily burnt up woman that is to supposedly be an older version of Eliza. And so we end up seeing like what we are to believe looks like Sharon. And so this thing is to be like, well, this isn't actually Sharon, it's just something that looks like her. And so this thing that I guess I can just call the devil, because it says it's to go by a number of different names. I'm like, so Lucifer, Morningstar, what are you rolling with? So I guess the devil had decided to come to this town to eventually just set up a franchise. A franchise that I guess didn't go anywhere. So he's just like stuck with like one kind of McDonald's, so to speak. So he's just like, meh, like I guess like eventually someone will come to this McDonald's and die. So aka Silent Hill is his McDonald's. So his franchise that he set up that didn't go anywhere. So he's just like, meh, well, that sucks. So kind of like paraphrasing what this guy has to say. So the devil had supposedly found Eliza, who had been a burnt up woman, and I guess because of the tragedy of her getting burnt up, she decided to team up with the devil, and so I guess the devil had produced a child, which is to eventually be Sharon, and so we had the devil who looks like Sharon to have eventually gone off to this one church to give up this child for eventually for her to be adopted, to eventually have her be yelling and screaming for Silent Hill, for I guess eventually to have people be dragged into Silent Hill. So like this is kind of like a bait and switch kind of thing, or this is kind of like fishing kind of thing. Like go and bring the one kid and kind of like toss it out there as bait to just have the kid screaming Silent Hill, Silent Hill, oh my god, I need to go to Silent Hill. And or in this place she wants to go to McDonald's basically. And so then the the parents who are just like, god, like she is whining and b-wording and moaning about this whole McDonald's Silent Hill thing, so I guess I just have to take her to it. And like Christopher is just like, no, how about we just put her in a mental hospital forever, so that way she'll just never want to go to McDonald's ever again, aka Silent Hill. But because she'll just be like, well, I guess I'm never going to go to Silent Hill, aka McDonald's. And so, so yeah, like the metaphor is there that basically you have this kid that like desperately wants to go and get only this one meal, which is Silent Hill meal. And so Rose is just like, well, I'll just give in to my child. I'll just give her what she wants. And then what she wants is the darkest, creepiest thing ever. But then then Rose is just like, you know what? Like, I have to figure out why this kid likes this so much. Like, I have to go and do my own investigating and figure out why this girl likes this product so much. And so then Rose gets in there and she's like, you know what? I think I'm enjoying this too. Enjoying the ride, the adventure, the whatever. I'm liking this McDonald's also. Like, yeah, it doesn't have the great meal like people have just built it up to be, but you know, it has its charm. It has its whimsy. So so the devil who is in this child is to so like that's the whole ordeal. And so now the devil is to go and want to protect Sharon, and because Christabel and the soldiers are to want to take this kid and burn her to the stake. So the devil is to combine forces with Sharon's mother, which is Rose, to save this kid, because technically it's his daughter too. So all of a sudden the devil is to fade into Sharon's body, weirdly, as the devil is to hug her. So Sharon goes off to the church and is now going to demand that they release her kid. And so they're like, nah, we're busy wanting to burn down this kid. Like, you know what, we really just want to do this. It sounds good on paper, it sounds like the right thing to do. This is a devil girl. She's a demon devil girl. We need to kill her off. I'm like, why aren't they killing off any of the other number of monsters that are hanging out in that Silent Hill? Like, why only this one specifically that they're going and trying to take? What about that pyramid guy? Why aren't they taking that thing down? But I guess that's just me, right? So what ends up happening is they decide, well, since this girl is a witch woman, we're going to go and we're going to try to kill her. Yeah, that doesn't quite work out because all of a sudden, Rose just all of a sudden absurdly just has Wolverine healing factor, I guess, coming from the devil. And so all of a sudden, the burnt up corpse of Eliza is to appear uh, out of this hole in the ground. And then all of a sudden, there's to be barbed wire coming and grabbing everyone and just grinding them up in this town. And so, or in this church, I mean. And so Rose goes off and she is to now go and try to save her daughter and untie her from this ladder. And there's to, I guess, be some certain guys, I think, called the, like Adam or the Elder or something like that. Congressions? Whoever any of those are. So there's to be these two guys who are to eventually kind of stop Sharon. And so, like, those guys end up just getting grabbed by this barbed wire. So Rose just ends up going and grabbing grabbing Sharon, and now they're pulling the Indiana Jones Temple of the Lost Ark thing, where Rose is to shield Sharon with and just say like, "Hey, just go to sleep. Just this is all a horrible dream. You're not seeing everybody getting like torn apart by bears or anything like that, or in this case, barbed wire. You're not seeing any of this. You're not seeing this horrible imagery that's going to scar you for life." So Sharon is trying to close her eyes, and so all of a sudden we have the devil who ends up kind of popping out and kind of is just walking around to get more and more closer to see Sharon. And then bizarrely the devil disappears again. And so we have a moment where Dahlia is to assess that she's going to be next to be killed. Because she is just another member of this town. And so Rose is tell Dahlia, it's like, well, she's never going to kill you because this woman who's Alyssa is to be your daughter. And like supposedly Sybil was to mention before that a daughter is to see her mother as God, and so that's why she will never like hurt her or do anything like that. So Delia is like, well, I guess I'm not gonna be dying anytime soon, so I'm probably gonna be the last one here, just kicking it off forever, in this wasteland of a place. So Rose and both Rose and Sharon decide to get the heck out of here and decide to go into their car and decide to drive off. So Rose is to go and call Christopher while they're making the drive home and like let him know that, hey, we're heading home. Get the popcorn ready. Throw some steaks on the grill. We're coming home. And so here's the thing. So Christopher is having like seemingly where he is to be at, which is home, the nicest of weather. And so both Rose and Sharon are driving off, and everywhere they are to be is to be strangely cloudy or strangely foggy. And so when I originally like started to like watch this, I was like, oh, okay, I can see exactly where this is heading. Because like I don't know how many times that I would kind of understand that Silent Hill really isn't much of like a one place. It's just a place that you can't escape from once you enter. So eventually that leads to Rose and Sharon getting home. Supposedly Christopher is to be lying on the couch, and weirdly they're not shooting where Christopher is. So all of a sudden, Sharon is to go into another room, and so we cue back to Rose, who we now see the whole part of this room now shown, and the couch that Christopher is to be sleeping in is weirdly empty. So when Christopher is to wake up, he is to not see Sharon or Rose or anybody sitting in this home. You would have thought if, like, Christopher must have easily fallen asleep and is a really deep sleeper. Because I'm sorry, if I would have been like hearing somebody coming into my house, I probably would have woken up and like, oh hey, how's it going? But I guess Christopher doesn't because he's fast asleep because evidently both Rose and Sharon are still in Silent Hill. And that's how they just end this movie. Supposedly, I had seen the sequel of this film, and from what I do remember, what ends up happening is Sharon ends up coming back to the real world, and so eventually when Sharon meets back up with her father, like her father is just like, well, we have to get your mother back. We have to eventually try to figure out a way to get her out of Silent Hill. And so that becomes like the whole thing where eventually Sharon is to come from out of Silent Hill, grow up quite a bit, and then eventually like Silent Hill starts to kind of slip in into this world, and so Sharon now has to go and find her mother to get back her mother into the real world, and then eventually fight off people along the way, aka monsterish being of things. So maybe I might eventually at some point do the Silent Hill sequel, but that might not be anytime soon. But with that said, considering I've talked for fairly a long stretch of time now, I think I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody. If I missed anything, or if I didn't go into heavily details about stuff, I apologize, but otherwise I also probably rushed through this also. There's probably that whole detail, that whole speech about that whole devil thing. Like, I probably got, like, something confused or lost in translation there. Or people could have a lot of different interpretations of who that supposedly kid is. If it's not the devil, it could be anything else. Or people could have any number of kind of ideas of who anything is in this movie. So with that said, I'm going to get the heck out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.